Hey friends, happy Sunday. Today is Sunday, August 30th, and I'm coming to you from the second grade classroom. And I want to show you where we are on our timeline because this is pretty cool. So this is our journey through the storyline of Scripture. And you guys started in the beginning in Genesis when God created the earth. And we are right here in the middle. We have made it almost halfway through our big picture story of the Bible. So congratulations, you guys are doing awesome. And you're seeing God's big picture of how he loves you and he wants to rescue you and he sent Jesus for you. So we're gonna pick up our story where we left off last week. And if you remember, last week we learned that God changed the king's heart, King Cyrus. Allowed the Israelites to go home and they began to rebuild the temple. And if you remember, the temple is where God met with his people. It was a significant place for them. And so in this story, we're going to see how that temple was eventually completed and some of the struggles that they went through to get it completed. So I want to also remind you actually that our big picture question and answer for this whole section, because this is our last week of this section, is how can we obey God? And we trust God to give us the strength to obey him. We don't have the strength in ourselves, and so we trust him to give us that strength. So you can follow along in our story in the book of Ezra. So if you remember, Psalms is a big book in the Old Testament. If you go before Psalms, it's Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther, Job, Psalms. And so you go back to Ezra, we're going to be in chapters 4, 5, and 6. So when God's people returned to Jerusalem, they got to work rebuilding God's temple. And they finished the temple foundation, but their enemies did not want them to rebuild the temple. God's people did not want any trouble, so they stopped. They stopped building the temple. God sent the prophet Haggai and Zechariah to encourage the leaders so that the leaders would start working on the temple again. At this time, there was a governor named Tatinai, and he saw that they had started rebuilding again. And he worked for King Darius, the new king of Persia. So Cyrus is gone, now we have King Darius. And he was in charge of Judah. And so Tatinai, this governor, talked to Zerubbabel and the others working on the temple and said, "Do you have permission to rebuild this temple?" Tatinai asked. Tatinai sent a report to King Darius. While he waited for an answer, God's people kept building. This is what Tatinai's letter to Darius said. To Darius the king, this letter is to tell you that the people in Judah are building the temple of the great God. Isn't it cool that they call him the great God? They know. They say that King Darius gave them permission to rebuild the temple. Please search the royal records to see if this is true. I feel like this guy is trying to cause some trouble here. King Darius's officials searched the royal records for Cyrus's order and they found it. A scroll with a record from King Cyrus. This is what was written on the scroll. Let God's temple be rebuilt. It will be a place to offer sacrifices. Let its foundation be rebuilt. King Cyrus had also ordered for the cost of the building to be paid out of the royal treasury. This is amazing. So King Darius sent a letter to Tatinai and he gave this order. Stay away from the workers in Jerusalem. Don't bother them. Don't try to stop them. Give them whatever they need. And if anyone tries to destroy God's temple, may God destroy that person. That is a bold declaration from a king who is ruling over these people, but allowing them to live in freedom and rebuild this temple to our great God. They call him a great God. So Tatinai and the other officials obeyed King Darius's order. The Jewish leaders kept building and they finally finished the temple of God. The people celebrated and made offerings to God. Then God's people celebrated the Passover. Do you remember the Passover? We learned about this right before Moses led his people out of Egypt. So after the plagues, that night when the last plague was going to kill the firstborn in each house, they did the Passover. They put the blood over the doorpost so that the angel of death would pass over and would spare them. And it was a picture of Christ and how he sacrificed on our behalf. And so they celebrated that Passover, and the people were so happy because God had changed Darius's heart also so that he would help them. And now the temple was finally complete. See, God's people rebuilt the temple so they would have a place to worship God. Years later, God sent his son Jesus to be with his people. Now God's dwelling is not the temple, but directly with his people, with you and me. Because of Jesus, we don't need a temple anymore. We can go to him and meet with him whenever we want and whenever we need. And I hope that you do that. I hope you go to God whenever you need him. So I want to remind us of our Bible verse, which is Daniel chapter 2, 20 through 21. You can sing it to row, row, row your boat, or just say it. So I'm going to say it. It's right over my shoulder, right over here. Praise be to the name of God forever and ever. Wisdom and power are his. He changes times and seasons. He disposes kings and raises up others. Daniel 2, 20 through 21. So I hope that you memorize that. If you come to church and you haven't already told me, come tell me the verse and I have a prize for you guys. And today, our activity is actually very simple. It's something that you don't need anything for. And so I want to encourage you guys to think about stewardship. So stewardship is taking the things that you've been given, your talents, your gifts, your stuff, and seeing if there's ways that you could use it for God's kingdom. It's a way that we can worship God. Just like the Israelites worship God at the temple, we can worship in many ways now because of Jesus. And so one thing that we've already done is our Sunshine Acres donation drive. And so we've been asking you guys to bring clothes and toys and anything that kids might need, or potentially that they could sell at the thrift stores to support this orphanage. It's really an orphanage for kids who've been separated from their parents. And that is a way that we can show stewardship. Another way is you could plant flowers outside, or you can help organize a craft closet, or clean the nursery toys here at the church, or make cards that say thank you to somebody who's helped you. So I hope that this is something that you will think of doing this week, and just use the resources that you guys have. If you want also, you could bring in that last drive of toys or unused items for Sunshine Acres. If you're going to bring stuff in, please let me know, lisa@fcob.org. I'm going to try to donate them the following Friday. So I believe that's the 4th of September. So try to get those to me before the 4th of September so we can get them to Sunshine Acres and bless that amazing organization. I hope you guys have a happy Sunday. Bye.